Welcome to part 2 of Notes 8.4, where we're talking about some special forms of parallelograms. All right, so in this problem here, we've got a rectangle and we have a rhombus. So let's mark the things that make those a rectangle and a rhombus. If BDEG is a rectangle, then this is true. And all of these are right angles. That's what makes a rectangle for right angles. And if ABCD is a rhombus, then we're going to mark that all of these are congruent. All right, what else do we know? Well, if this is a rhombus, then its diagonals are perpendicular. Okay, so we know that that is true. And we also know that these guys, the diagonals bisect the opposite angles. So this is true. Okay. And we also know that opposite angles are congruent because it's a parallelogram. All right, and then in my rectangle down here, we know that the diagonals bisect each other and the diagonals are congruent because it's a rectangle, so we know that that is true. Okay, so let's see if that helps us a little bit finding the measures of these indicated angles. Okay, so GDB here is this angle right here. Well, these two angles are complementary. If this one's 63, then this one must be, I'm going to go with 27, if I did my math correctly. So 27 degrees. All right, and then ABC. So this whole angle right here. Well, we said that these two angles bisect each other, so this is 27 and this is 27. And we know because this is a parallelogram that the opposite angles are congruent, which means that these two together make 54. So this angle right here must be 54 degrees. All right, DAB. Well, there's a number of ways to do this, but if this is a right angle right here, angle H, all four of these are right angles, and this is 27, then this one right here must be 63 because these two have to be complementary. And then again, we have that whole bisecting thing, which means that this whole angle right here, DAB, is twice that, so that would be 126 degrees. And then BCG. Okay, well, we need to know some more angles down here. But this one, I'll just do it in red to differentiate, is congruent to this angle right here. And we know that this one's 63, and we know that this one is 63 degrees because this is an isosceles triangle, which means that if I add these two together and subtract them from 180, I find that one. So these two together are 126. Subtracted from 180, that would be 54. Which means that this one over here is also 54 degrees. All right, GCE. So then what is this angle right here? All right, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm tired of figuring out angles. So you find me the last four of these angles, and when you have your answers, come back and check them. Hit pause now. Okay, so you should have gotten 126, 90, 90, and 63. And you realize that all we knew in this entire figure was this 63 degree angle, and yet we were able to figure out what all of these other angles were just from that, just by knowing the properties. You can see how important it is that you know those properties solidly. All right, moving on. Time for a proof. We are given that triangle GEC is congruent to triangle GHX, so this one up top is congruent to this one right below it. And furthermore, we know that this quadrilateral right here, GEBH, is a parallelogram. What we have to prove, though, is that it is a rhombus. Well, what makes a rhombus a rhombus? Four congruent sides. So that's what we should be looking for. We should be looking to prove that all four sides are congruent. All right. So let's start with our givens. We know that triangle GEC is congruent to triangle GHX. And we also know that GEBH is a parallelogram. All right, and those are our givens. Okay. Now, we just talked about the fact that if we're going to say that it's a rhombus, we need to say that all the sides are congruent. So we should start talking about congruent sides. Well, if these two triangles are congruent, then what sides are congruent? GE is congruent to GH, so that's a good start. So GE is congruent to GH. And what would my reason for that be? It is our old friend CPCTC, because once we've proven two triangles congruent, then all of their corresponding parts are congruent. All right, the fact that this is a parallelogram means that GH is congruent to EB, and also that GE is congruent to BH. And my reason for that is if parallelogram, then both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. All right, so far so good. So we've got multiple congruent sides, but I still have not yet said that all four sides are congruent. So I've got GE congruent to both GH and BH, but I need to say that it's congruent to EB, and then I will be good to go. So GE is congruent to EB. And my reason for that is, well, GE is congruent to GH, and GH is congruent to EB, therefore GE is congruent to EB. That is my transitive property. So my transitive property of segment congruence. All right, so now I've said that all four sides are congruent, which means that GEBH is a rhombus. And that would be my, we could probably say definition of a rhombus because we've proven that all four sides are congruent. So definition of a rhombus is that it has four congruent sides, and that's what we have shown. If you have questions, be sure to ask about them tomorrow. One more proof. This one I want you to do, and then I want you to come back and check your answers. So fill in all of your reasons, and then come back and check and see whether or not you are right. Hit pause now. All right, so you should have gotten given, and then the reflexive property of segment congruence. The next one was also given. The fact that those are right angles is the definition of perpendicular lines. And then if we have a parallelogram, then the diagonals bisect each other. All right, number 6, I want you to tell me what goes in this blank in the notes check. 7, we've proven triangles congruent, so now we can use CPCTC. 8 says if it's a parallelogram, then both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. I want you to tell me the reason for number 9 in the notes check. And then number 10 would be the definition of a rhombus. We've proven all four sides congruent. Hope that went well for you. Be sure to go on and do the notes check, and if you have any questions, ask me in class. Thanks.